Dr. Sharanya T. Jayakumar, one of the first doctorates in educational psychology in India. And Dr. Sharanya ma'am is a trailblazer in her field, serving as a consultant educational psychologist and the chief mentor at the Polo Research. Her extensive expertise is recognized by the Ministry of Women and Child Development, the Tamil Nadu Police Department, and many educational institutions across the country. Dr. Sharanya is also a passionate advocate for the child's rights and safety, having played a pivotal role as a former member of the Tamil Nadu Commission for Protection of Child Rights. She is widely appreciated for her efforts in raising awareness about the POCSO Act and the safe use of digital media for children. Her work has touched the lives of countless children, parents, and educators, making her an influential voice in the field of psychology and education. The team Caprix is very happy to have you here today with us, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining and enlightening all of us. And we have a lot of educators who are eagerly waiting to listen to you talk. And we are here today to talk about a very crucial topic about understanding the growth stages for better teaching. As educators and caregivers, it is essential for us to recognize the different developmental phases a child undergoes, and how these stages influence learning. That is what Dr. Sharanya ma'am here is going to give us insights on about. So let's give ma'am a very warm welcome and start with our session today. Welcome, ma'am, and what would you like to tell us about the session today?
I'm also looking forward to how this session is going to help others who are watching this. I'm sure I'll be of some use because I'm a policy maker with the Government of India, and I work with child rights, with policies around implementation of child rights and protection of child rights.
Yes, ma'am. So before we start into the topic and start discussing about the topic in hand today, personally we'd like to ask you a few things because your journey has been very inspiring to all of us, and we're all seeing you every day through social media, and wherever we go in social media, we see you voice out on various issues that are happening in the country, outside of country, and you always are a torchbearer. You always talk about things at first hand, and so we always wait for your message and your videos online. So since we have you live here, from our team, we have certain questions that we'd like to ask you. And the first question of that would be, can you share a personal story or anecdote that had a significant impact in your career choices?
My initial stages life had the most unstable, career choices of my life. I, just like any other child, I also chose subjects of teachers who are my favorite, not subjects that would do good to my life. I didn't like biology, so I didn't choose biology. And then later on, I didn't like my biology teacher. That's why I didn't choose biology. And then I went on to do engineering because back then, if you score 98 percentage in your class 12, what else would you join? You're a computer science student. You have no choice but to join engineering. So I also joined engineering. And then for some reason, I was very good at coding. I could code very well and very effortlessly I could study. I didn't put too much efforts, and I'm not a hardworking student and all. No, I had my own time with my friends. I used to be naughty in class. I used to bunk classes. All of that I used to do, but I used to have my own way of scoring and doing well. But then somewhere within me, see, I am born cleft lip, born with a very, very humble beginning. We did not have a very luxurious life in my childhood. No, we could afford only like 2 meals a day, and we lived in a rented house for which we could not pay the rent for many months. And the owners were magnanimous enough to, to say it's okay. You still are like family to us, and things like that. So I've been in a place where I always wanted to do something for the children who are like first graduates in the family, some guidance to be given to them. See, off late now, when I'm working as an advocate for child rights, there are so many people. I'm not an advocate as such. Okay, I just advocate child rights because I'm trained on child rights. And I'm a doctorate in educational psychology. But there are a lot of people who said, you're proper UPSC material, Sharanya. You should have studied law and then done UPSC. But I didn't get that guidance when I was a little girl. So when I started working for TCS, I was in the research department. I was working for a project that did some educational work for the government of Bihar and Orissa. So that's when I understood that there is this field called educational psychology. And there are not many educational psychologists in the country. So when not many people are there, I'd like to do that. I'd like to explore that. And that's how I got into this field. And that was easier for me to give back to the society, give back to the government school children, and then later now also to the private school children. I visited more than 2,600 schools, addressing parents, teachers, and so many other people.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. That is a very inspiring story, and I'm sure it's sending a message to everybody out there. So to be something and to give back to the society is like really, really important. Yeah. And moving on to the next question, you inspire and motivate so many people through your work. Like, what is the one thing that you get back to when you need a lift during tough times? Is it a song or a movie or a book or your family?
I am the most boring person one can be. I am a nerd that way. Even at work, I'm like that. I've never read even one proper storybook in my life. All that I read is books on psychology. And I don't think that will help me during my in my my times when I'm down and all of that. Movies, after I did my doctorate, it'll be very funny if I tell you. When I go to a movie theater, if it's really engaging, I watch the movie properly. But otherwise, I sit and look at the audience and I think, what do they feel about this scene, about this movie? So my family simply thinks I'm crazy that way also. There is absolutely no song, no movie, no book that can actually inspire me. But days when I feel a little down, I go and sit and talk to my father or my husband, because these two are the largest driving forces of my life, I should say. Every time I felt a little low, I felt I was not too good at something, maybe I can't handle this. See, in fact, I should say, when I was the member of the State Commission for Protection of Child Rights, I've handled multiple cases, some very dangerous, life threatening as well, because the person involved is a biggie, very powerful person with a lot of money, and I cannot go and file a case or take action against them. So in Tamil, there is a saying, no, Ediriyin balam paathu modunu, which means understand your enemy and then fight with them. If they're too strong, stay away. But so going with that, sometimes when I stay away also, my husband says, what's wrong with you? Why did you come into this field? To fight. It's okay. Go and fight. We are all there for you. And that is what really motivates me. So no book, no movie, no song can give me that motivation or inspiration that my husband or my father can give me.
That's great, ma'am. And I think even in a recent interview, somebody had asked you about the same thing, like how do you handle threats, in the work of the field that you're in. And I remember this one Tamil saying that you said, "Ilam kandru bayam
Ilam
ariyadu."
kandru bayam ariyadu. Yes. Yes. No, actually, Sushmika, I have to tell you, I was the youngest member of any state commissions in India. Generally, these state commission members are all 45 plus, 50 plus. Okay. I was just 33 when I started working for the commission. So basically, I will just go for it. I won't get scared. I don't think about who will question me, who am I answerable to. When you are not corrupt, you have that amount of confidence, no? That is amazing.
That is great, ma'am. It's paved way for, a lot of youngsters. And thank you for doing that. You've started something great.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So now moving on to our topic. Can you provide an overview of the key growth stages in early childhood that educators should be aware of?
See, now educators have to be aware of the lifestyle of that particular child also. It's not a generalized thing for every child. Okay, each child have a different lifestyle, different screen time, different nutrition, different way of upbringing at home. And if they don't understand that, they will not be able to help the child in school, especially the early childhood educators, those who are running preschools and LKGs and UKGs. The kindergarten teachers have to understand how the setup is at home for this child, number one. Number two, they have to understand what the law says. They have to understand what the policies say, what the national education policy says, what laws protecting children says. See, basically, I always say, if you buy a telephone or mobile phone, don't you go through the what do you call it, the manual, to understand the features of the phone and to see how well or how safely you can use the phone. Same way, when you're working with children, you have to understand what to do, and more specifically what not to do with a child. Some days when you overdo what you're supposed to do, that also becomes a problem. Only teach the child what is sufficient. See, I have to mention here, this is not a paid program. I am not doing any paid promotion here, but I understand the Caprix curriculum very well. You guys do just what is required for the child. You understand? I know a lot of other curriculums that overdo things. That's not okay. Making the child excessively competitive, overfeeding the child will later become a problem when they go into their teens. So, what to do, what not to do, how to give instructions to a child, understanding reinforcement and punishment mechanisms, even for a little child, and understanding that child's world is very important.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And I think that is a very important thing which every educator out there should keep in mind. To know a child's story, to know the kind of environment they're from is very, very crucial to support
Yeah.
their learning journey.
See here, I also want to mention there are so many preschools or play schools that do excessive sex education, safety education, not required. Teach only what is required for that child. What psychology or developmental psychology says, before 7 years, which is 6 and below, a child is just exploring his or her environment, new people. By that time, if you go and make everybody a villain and say this could happen to you, that could happen to you, this could also happen to you, they start becoming very suspicious about everybody around them. I must say this, recently in a very, very well reputed school down south, they taught LKG kids about good touch, bad touch, very bad touch, people who could behave wrongly with them. And they apparently said, somebody who touches your armpit, it's called bad touch. Okay. And then that evening, this child was trying to hop onto the van, and then there was a helper, a male, who helped that child and lifted the child and kept in the van. That's all happened. So this child went back home crying, telling, bad touch, bad touch. I will not go back to that school. And that child later on went on to become school refusal also. So be very considerate of what exactly you're telling the child. It could actually create a wrong impact as well.
Yes, ma'am. That is, I think, a very important message, and it's need of the hour now with the recent
Yeah.
incidents that have happened in our country. And moving on to our next segment, this is actually a very important and a fun one for us. It's called Mythbusters. So there are a lot of myths involved with the developmental milestones of a child. So we have selected a few myths, and we'd like for you to break it with us.
Okay.
So the first one is milestones are universal and apply to all children.
No, medically, maybe a few are, yes. See, a child is supposed to crawl at a certain age, sit at a particular age, walk at a particular age, digest certain solid foods at a particular age. With all of these, they understand how well a child is developing. But in developmental psychology, we say each child takes his or her own sweet time to learn, to understand, to settle into a class, to mingle with family members, to play with neighbors. Not all child is the same. My own second daughter, she learned colors only when she was 6 years old. Until then, she didn't know colors. I don't know if she knew it or she refused to tell it to us, but she didn't know colors. So the school repeatedly said, you have to, do a test on her immediately. I said, no. The child will take time to sweetly develop. Give her the time. There are children. Recently, I also shared a story on my Instagram profile that said some children start talking with, the excessive amount of screen time and lack of communication at home. Today, there are few children who start talking at the age of 7 and 8. And that's also considered normal according to us, because that's how they develop. So giving the child the time to develop is very, very important, and you have to stop being judgmental with the kid. Stop being excessively competitive with the kid. If your neighbor child is reciting Tirukkural very well and good, we'll appreciate that kid. But let's not let our child down because of that.
Very well said. And I'm sure whoever is watching, all the educators are aware of this, because, of course, there are certain milestones which are set, but then it doesn't apply to every child. It doesn't have to.
Sushmika, I'm invited as guest, to so many play schools graduation ceremony. I think when Jan to March, my schedule is full of graduation ceremonies only. I visit so many play schools and their graduation ceremonies. I see them doing multiple things with their play school kid. Okay, I'll tell them. Recently, I went to a play school where a child was made to recite about 25 Tirukkurals. I said, I can give it to you, and writing, this child will not remember this 2-3 years from now if you're not going to remind it often. So let's not do too much also. What a child can do, if the child is happily doing it, then it's okay. But pushing and forcing a child to do anything beyond his or her ability is not okay.
Yes. And moving on to our second question. If a child is ahead or behind in milestones, it reflects on the parenting quality.
I would not say this is a complete myth. There is an effect of parenting on a child's development, no doubt. Okay. There are a lot of parents who, do this excessive, over pampered helicopter parenting, which is not actually okay. They don't let the child fall down. They don't let the child cry. They don't let anybody scold the child. They don't let other children fight with the child. All this definitely affects the milestones of the child. It delays the milestones sometimes. You understand? And sometimes if you are being too ignorant also. Recently, I should tell this, I went for a family dinner. Okay, my husband, I, and my 2 daughters were at a dinner. In the same restaurant, in the table just next to us, there was a father, a mother, the grandfather, and a little boy. Okay, this little boy, from the time I am seeing him, he is on his iPad, and his iPad is like this. Okay, his eyes like into the iPad. He is watching some Peppa Pig figurines related video. Okay, I understand they don't have conversations with the child. The child is just there doing what he likes. Then what happened after their dinner? The grandfather is cutting the cake because it's his poor birthday. Okay. Only the mother and the father are clapping. This child is not at all involving in this. This is a big red flag in developmental psychology, in social psychology. So here, don't you understand that parenting also plays a role? You have to learn to say no to your child. More than 1 or 2 hours of screen time, now I would say limited to 30 minutes, understanding how colorful, how flashy, how noisy, and how fast it is. Children should learn to appreciate other people and what other people do. It's not always about colorful entertainment. I think here parenting plays a role, and that directly affects the milestones. But I must admit that in the slums where there's complete ignorant parenting, children also develop on their own. So sometimes I must say that parenting quality definitely affects the milestones also. When you overdo certain things, there is a small impact. But sometimes the child also takes its own time to develop.
Thank you. Moving on to our next question. If a child has a developmental delay, it means they'll face lifelong challenges.
No, not at all. Not at all. No. You know what sort of challenges the child could face because of the developmental delay. If the child is constantly harassed by the teachers and the parents, then there is some challenge that the child will face, some childhood trauma, that can actually affect the child. But otherwise, because of the developmental delay, especially in the a psychosocial perspective, I don't think there is a problem at all. Because personality develops with age, ability to learn changes with age. I should say I was a completely dull child until I was 9 years old. Completely dull. I still have my report cards, failing half my exams because I had language problems. I was in an English school, but my parents don't speak English. My neighbors don't speak English. Abdi pesnalo, hey Peter, don't speak. This is what they'll say. So because of my language problem, I could not study well, and everything was late. Tables I learned late. Everything was late only. But that did not affect me in any which ways when I grew up. So children develop really fast, especially some children before puberty and after puberty, they're completely different people. Yeah, so I don't think there is lifelong challenges. No. In fact, even if they are autistic, they have wonderful jobs for autistic people. You're colorblind, you have a job for colorblind people. So there are opportunities everywhere. I don't think there are lifelong challenges. No.
Thank you, ma'am. I think you've put a lot of parents and educators at ease with this statement that you've given. Moving on to our next segment. So this is called Pro Tips and Hacks. Right. So the first question here is, how do early childhood experiences influence a child's development?
See, basically about nutrition, about social developmental skills, all of this, the first 7 years, very, 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 very important. I don't deny it at all. See, sometimes some children learn to make friends, some children learn to talk to their teachers, some children learn to speak only in that time. So that is when the real foundation happens. You understand? If the foundation is not good, you're going nowhere in life. And the new national education policy says, please strengthen Anganwadis and play schools. Because only if you strengthen it there, see in Tamil there is a saying, no, Aindil valayadada, Aimbadil valayadu. It's easier to teach children anything from behavior to etiquettes to language to everything when they're 5 years old. When they're 50 and 15, even that is difficult. You understand? So parents who learn to discipline their child during this early childhood stage, teachers who help a child fall into a routine at that age, like having a study time, a reading time, a proper bedtime, entertainment time, knowing to handle their time management skills properly, that's very, very important. That's what a teacher must do. So that way, if you're able to do that for little children properly, then going to school, any school can teach them. Academics is the last thing a child will learn in school, ma. I always believe school is a smaller version of the society that the child is going to live in. The child learns to respect people, adore teachers, share food. All of this a child will learn in play school. So, in fact, when I put my daughter in play school when she was only 2 years old, there were so many people who said, "Ava happier irukatume veetla yen podra." Now, so happier what she's going to do at home. If there are grandparents at home who can spend time with her, it's okay. If there are parents at home who can spend time with her, okay. I'm working, he is working, no grandparents at home. This child is going to spend time on TV unnecessarily. Might as well go to a play school and learn a lot of things. See, the NEP 2020 says a little later, but there is something called play group in many schools.
Yes.
You can always send your child. I believe the child can do so much more than what the time wasted at home, I should say.
Exactly, ma'am. Very well said. Moving on to the next question. How do you see the understanding of growth stages evolving in the future of education? And are there any emerging research trends or innovation that educators should be aware of?
Artificial intelligence in educating toddlers is now the trend. I recently attended a conference, online conference in US that talked about using artificial intelligence to help a child, basically understanding how much a child understands and then progressing through, his academics. That was a wonderful trend, I should say. And then now I think in psychology, we say there are 12 different types of play that a child must play. Okay. Manually taking care of it, looking at it. And now there are certain apps like a checklist that says, hey, has your child played this? Hey, has your child played that? I know it's going to become too mechanical, but at least that way we ensure that they do everything. There are wonderful apps that keep a check on the child's nutrition. So we can use technology to understand all of this, and also to ensure the safety of the child. There are a lot of technology for that also.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. That was very insightful. I think, we are now into the age of AI, and slowly AI is into education, and we are seeing a lot of trends and changes around us. And I think as educators, it is important we, embrace those changes and
Yeah.
make use of it for the betterment of the children. So, moving on to the next question. What immediate steps should parents take if they notice any developmental delays in their children?
That's a very, very nice question. In my OP, my outpatient setup, there are so many parents who bring their children to me when they are 14 and 15 and say, my child just does not read and write. Can you please check? And then we understand that the child was dyslexic. And then we say, what were you doing all this while? Why didn't we check or assess when the child was 8, 9 years, or even 7 years? 7, 8, 9, we can do a proper test to understand if the child has any learning difficulties. Can be slow learning, can be dysgraphia, dyscalculia, dyslexia, whatever, or even attention problems. So it's very important that we understand a child, especially in that 7, 8, and 9 years. There are some parents who do it at a very early stage. So 3 years old child, they'll bring to me and say, I feel this child has ADHD. I Googled the symptoms on and Google said my child has ADHD. We said, don't do it too early. Give the child some time to develop. But when the child is 7, 8, and 9 and lagging in social skills, not falling into a routine, fighting with everybody, not wanting to go to school, not socializing, then there is social isolation, which means always wanting to be alone at home. These are things we cannot ignore. So we have to immediately address this, speak to the school, find out how the child is doing in school. See, when the teacher understands this and when they call the parent and tell about this, many a times the parents are very, very defensive. No, they say, why are you telling this about my child? Are you branding my child psychiatric? All of this they ask. See, you have to understand that the teacher is telling this because she's finding something different in the child. So please understand what the child is doing at home and observe the child at home also, and take some help of some educators, some counselors, some psychologists, some therapists well in advance, so we can help the child. So there is so the gap, no, in education is easy to bridge. The gap is too much, then bridging also becomes a problem.
Yes, ma'am. That is exactly what I think many parents here should make a note, because early intervention is really, really important, and so that we prevent it from making any more effect to the child's career.
Yes.
Now, moving on to our last question. So, this is something I really wanted to discuss with you, ma'am. So, you've been a flag bearer for the FOXO awareness and digital media safety for children, right? And in the light of the recent incidents in our country, it questions the safety of young children in our country. What should schools do as the first line of defense to ensure the protection of their children?
First thing is educate your children age appropriately. Age appropriate safety and sex education is important. Overdoing it is also not okay. Number one. Number two, monitoring the kids and their behavior is very important. Child that actually could be abused by somebody, generally these abusers don't do it overnight. They just don't, in just one day, one hour, they just want to misbehave the child. They don't do that. They observe the child, they get very close to the child, and then they desensitize the child, and then only they do such things. So if there is a change in the behavior of a child, and if that is noticed, we can actually help the child. As monitoring the child is important, and for this the staff need to be trained very frequently, on few concepts of safety, laws, child psychology, educational psychology, etc. Having sessions with the parents also regularly is important. You understand? Also asking them to identify few red flags if they find any at home, things like that. And most importantly, all of these play schools, have CCTV cameras. But many play schools, they have it, and then nobody is there for surveillance. You see, all these countries abroad, if they see, there are 10 corridors in the play school or 10 rooms in the play school. Somebody cannot, look at the 10 rooms at the same time, or you can't have 10 people. Understand? So you put CCTV cameras, and there is a screen, and there is somebody sitting there and watching that. Only in India that system is not there. The CCTV is just there and just playing somewhere, and nobody watches it. There is no surveillance. And then when something goes wrong, then only we go back to the CCTV. That is not what is supposed to happen. CCTV is for 24 hours surveillance. So if there is a CCTV in your school, then have somebody for surveillance 24 hours to watch what these children are doing. You'll be able to prevent a lot more incidents that's happening these days.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. I think this is a very, very important message at this hour and time, and all the school leaders who are watching this would ensure and take immediate steps, to avoid any such incidents from happening in our country anymore. And thank you so much for, helping us discover a lot of new things about the developmental milestones in children. And it was a very insightful session for all the educators who are watching. Ma'am. Thank you for giving us your time and addressing the very crucial topic today.
Thank you, Sushmika, for these lovely questions. I'm sure it's useful to many. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.